I am Krista Manning, 32, and last Thanksgiving my lifelong label as the family's resident underachiever? Yeah, it totally backfired. The fragile piece I'd spent years quietly holding together blew up spectacularly during our annual gathering. Honestly, it was a ticking time bomb all along, wrapped neatly in small talk and forced smiles, just waiting for me to make one false move. That night, my parents had decorated the table with their usual precision: gold-trimmed china, heirloom candlesticks, and carefully arranged bouquets of autumn flowers. Everything screamed elegance, wealth, success, values they desperately wanted to project, values embodied by my younger sister Shelby, the undisputed golden child, whose every minor achievement was treated like a Nobel Prize victory. And then there was me, the one who never quite fit. From childhood, I'd felt like an outsider in my own home, measured against Shelby's effortless charisma, her academic awards prominently displayed on the mantel, her every move documented in elaborate family newsletters. Meanwhile, my report cards, my quiet honors, they'd been politely acknowledged at best, and more often entirely forgotten. The dinner started predictably enough, with Mom fussing over Shelby's promotion at the prestigious law firm where she'd recently become the youngest junior partner. My father beamed, refilling her wine glass with exaggerated pride. "And Christa," Mom turned to me, eyes glittering with forced curiosity, "are you still doing that freelance thing?" "Consulting," I corrected softly, swallowing the ache in my throat. "And yes, it's going well." "Right," Dad interjected, eyes narrowing skeptically. "Well enough to finally get your own place? Or are you still throwing money away on rent?" The table hushed, attention suddenly laser-focused on me. Shelby's smirk was hidden behind her wine glass, her husband Randall exchanging amused glances with my Aunt Lisa. A familiar nausea twisted in my stomach. "I bought a house," I heard myself say, surprising even myself with how calm my voice remained. "Closed on it 3 months ago." Silence. Forks hovered midair, glasses paused halfway to lips. "You bought a house?" Shelby laughed incredulously. "Christa, seriously, how?" "With the money I earn," I said, refusing to break eye contact with her, "from my successful consulting business." Shelby's laughter faded. Mom stared, her forced smile frozen in place. Dad's face darkened visibly, irritated by my disruption of the evening's script. "You couldn't have mentioned this sooner," he growled quietly, the accusation heavy in his voice. "I tried," I answered simply, meeting his gaze steadily, feeling a surge of quiet strength. But nobody ever seemed to be listening. The atmosphere shifted, tension pooling thickly around us. My hands trembled slightly beneath the table, but I clenched them tightly, determined not to show weakness. I could feel the resentment simmering around me, the family's carefully curated illusion of unity fracturing as I stood firm. "You've ruined dinner," Dad snapped, his voice tight, eyes flaring. "All you ever think about is yourself." "No," I said, voice soft yet clear, feeling a lifetime of frustration crystallize into purpose. "All I ever did was keep quiet while you defined me, and I'm done." Their shocked silence ignited something powerful within me. Their shade didn't break me. It lit a spark. I wasn't just pushing back, I was about to flip the script entirely. And if you're watching this and you get it, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, you won't believe what they'll do once the truth comes out. You see, invisibility isn't something you earn overnight. It's shaped, slowly, through years of tiny, painful moments. Those moments when you hope someone notices you, but their eyes slide past you to someone else. Someone brighter, shinier, louder. Someone like my sister, Shelby. I was 14 the first time it really hit home. I'd come running into the kitchen clutching my straight-A report card, practically bursting with pride. Shelby had just come home too, carrying a second-place ribbon from the junior varsity debate tournament. Dad immediately hugged her, proudly declaring that she'd done the family proud. Meanwhile, I stood there awkwardly, holding my perfect grades, waiting for someone, anyone, to see me. Mom glanced at my report card briefly, nodded, and murmured something like, "Good job, Christa," but it felt like an afterthought. Her eyes drifted immediately back to Shelby, who was busy dramatically retelling her victory story. I folded the paper silently and slid it into my pocket. Even then, I understood my successes didn't count unless they fit my family's narrow definition of achievement. Fast forward to high school graduation. Shelby had graduated 2 years before with fanfare and a lavish party, speeches praising her limitless potential. My parents invited friends, family, even Shelby's teachers. My own graduation party was a low-key affair, a backyard barbecue with polite nods and awkward silences. The neighbors stopped by, asking politely about my plans, smiling politely when I said I'd gotten a full scholarship to the state university. Dad dismissed it as a nice safety school, while Mom busied herself refilling drinks, never really celebrating me. College was no different. I worked relentlessly, earned honors every semester, made Dean's List, yet every phone call home ended with Mom casually mentioning Shelby's latest internship, or Dad boasting how she was destined for greatness. My own internship at a prestigious consulting firm, the stepping stone to my eventual career, elicited nothing more than faint surprise, as if they'd genuinely forgotten I'd even applied. When graduation came again, Shelby's law school acceptance was front-page family news. My summa cum laude honor barely made the back page of Mom's annual Christmas newsletter, squeezed between her gardening updates and Dad's golf tournament results. It stung, but by then I'd learned not to expect more. Even my first big paycheck went unnoticed. I'd driven to their house, eager to share the excitement, hoping maybe this achievement would finally get me a seat at the table. Instead, Dad casually remarked how nice it must be to have that kind of hobby money. Shelby, meanwhile, had received yet another promotion, prompting champagne toasts and excited phone calls to relatives. I quietly folded my check back into my purse, smiling thinly, letting the ache settle somewhere deep inside. Each incident was small individually: dismissive glances, polite indifference, Shelby's ever-growing collection of family trophies. Yet together they formed a pattern, an unspoken message that had etched itself into my bones. I was invisible, less worthy, never quite enough. And yet, beneath the hurt and resentment, something else was brewing. Determination. Quiet, fierce, relentless. I wasn't waiting anymore for their validation or permission. In fact, their blindness had given me a strange kind of freedom. I would build success my own way, quietly, steadily, and completely without their knowledge. They'd ignored me for so long, they'd never see it coming. The night I decided to start my own consulting business was unremarkable to anyone else, but for me, it was a revelation. I'd just gotten home from another endless family dinner. Shelby had, once again, dominated the conversation with her courtroom anecdotes, leaving my latest promotion buried beneath a passing remark. The ache of invisibility sat heavy in my chest, but instead of crumbling beneath it, something shifted inside me. That night, in the quiet solitude of my rented apartment, I paced the tiny kitchen floor, restless and frustrated. I'd done everything by their rules. Graduated with honors, worked my way up in a respected consulting firm, carefully sculpted myself into someone they should have been proud of. Yet, I was still invisible, still second best. The realization struck like lightning. If playing by their rules got me nowhere, why not write my own? That very night, in pajamas with takeout containers scattered across the table, I sketched out a plan on the back of a grocery receipt. It wasn't elaborate, just simple bullet points. Start consulting independently, leverage my experience, build something entirely mine. My fingers trembled with anticipation. The sensation of finally taking control, exhilarating. But dreaming was easy, doing was hard. Over the next 2 years, my life became a whirlwind of sleepless nights, early mornings, and endless client calls wedged between lunch breaks and weekends. I juggled my full-time job at the firm with secretly building my own consultancy from scratch, my bedroom becoming part office, part war room. There were nights when I doubted myself deeply, when exhaustion crept in, whispering that perhaps my family was right, maybe I wasn't meant for greatness. But each time, that quiet fire inside pushed me forward, stronger than their dismissive voices, stronger than my own doubts. I landed my first client, a small business needing marketing guidance, and nearly cried tears of relief when the contract was signed. It was modest, but to me, it felt like conquering Everest. Then came the second client, then a third, each bigger, each more impressive than the last. Slowly, my little secret project blossomed, gathering momentum until my income from consulting began to rival my corporate salary, yet I kept it completely hidden from my family. It wasn't fear of their disapproval, I was beyond caring what they thought, but the intoxicating feeling of freedom. For the first time in my life, I was succeeding without their permission or knowledge. This success was mine alone, untouched by their bias, their standards, their indifference. 2 years became 3, and suddenly, quietly, I'd become something they never imagined. Independent, financially secure, confident. My consultancy had grown from a secret idea on a scrap of paper into a thriving business, respected in industry circles, landing contracts with companies my father bragged about without ever knowing I was behind their success. And then came the biggest opportunity yet. A major international brand, seeking fresh eyes and innovative strategies, reached out directly to me. If I landed this deal, my company would be propelled to a level even Shelby couldn't overshadow. Negotiations had stretched for weeks, and tonight, this very Thanksgiving, I'd learn if the deal was mine. As I stood in my bathroom mirror, adjusting my blouse and preparing to face my family yet again, excitement danced alongside my dread. Tonight, everything would change. My invisibility had become my superpower, my silence an advantage. Tonight they'd finally see me, and it would shake them to their core. As I drove toward my parents' sprawling house, the steering wheel clenched tightly in my grip. Anxiety and anticipation battled fiercely in my chest. Tonight wasn't just another obligatory family dinner. It was a showdown, whether they knew it or not. My phone sat quietly on the passenger seat, screen dark, tauntingly silent. Any moment now, it could light up with news that would redefine my life, marking the end of my invisibility forever. The irony wasn't lost on me. Years of dreading these dinners, yet here I was again, willingly subjecting myself to their judgmental scrutiny. As much as I despised admitting it, a small part of me, deeply buried yet undeniably alive, still craved their recognition, or at least their shocked respect. Pulling up the familiar driveway, lined with meticulously trimmed hedges, my stomach tightened into a familiar knot. Dad's luxury sedan gleamed ostentatiously under the porch lights, a blatant reminder of the wealth and status they so valued. Shelby's sleek white Audi parked arrogantly beside it, spotless and impeccable, as always. I eased my modest, reliable Subaru behind them, my very existence a quiet act of rebellion against their definition of success. Taking a deep breath, I stepped onto the porch, noticing the familiar autumn wreath hanging on the door. Its cheerful welcome felt hollow, somehow mocking. Pausing, I smoothed my hair and straightened my jacket, gathering courage before stepping inside. I knew exactly how this would unfold. Polite greetings, subtle digs, passive-aggressive compliments, but tonight I felt strangely invincible. My secret had become my shield, empowering me against whatever they threw my way. As I entered, Mom greeted me with practiced enthusiasm, planting a quick kiss on my cheek that left no warmth behind. Her eyes flickered critically over my attire before she turned abruptly, her attention captured by Shelby, who glided effortlessly into the room wearing a designer dress and exuding easy charm. Shelby hugged me briefly, her perfume heavy, overwhelming. "Glad you made it, Krista. We were just wondering if you'd found another last-minute work excuse to skip out." "Nope," I replied evenly, meeting her eyes with quiet defiance. "Wouldn't miss tonight." Dad entered then, his gaze assessing me with cold detachment. He nodded stiffly, giving me the same indifferent greeting as a stranger, before turning enthusiastically to Shelby. "Darling, Randall says you're leading another major case? Incredible." Shelby laughed lightly, basking in the praise while I watched silently, the familiar sting dulled by my own hidden strength. They talked animatedly about her latest courtroom triumph, their voices a backdrop as I glanced discreetly at my phone. Still nothing. Anxiety coiled tighter in my gut. As we sat at the elaborately set table, candles flickering gently, Mom filled plates and wine glasses, the room filled with meaningless small talk. My phone remained infuriatingly silent, each second feeling heavier than the last. Was I wrong? Had I been too confident, too hopeful? "Christa?" Dad's voice cut sharply through my spiraling thoughts. He leaned forward slightly, eyebrows raised with feigned politeness. "Still at that firm, or have you finally moved on to something more stable?" The table quieted instantly. Shelby glanced at me expectantly, lips curling slightly. All eyes turned to me, their collective gaze heavy with judgment and expectation. Holding Dad's gaze, I summoned every ounce of quiet courage I possessed, knowing exactly how this would sound. "Actually, Dad, I'm in consulting, my own consulting firm." Dad's smile vanished instantly, his eyes narrowing skeptically. consulting. How ambitious. I said nothing more, letting the silence stretch between us, feeling the weight of their skepticism against the force of my determination. My phone vibrated suddenly, jolting me. Heart hammering, I glanced down. The caller ID was unmistakable, the call I'd been awaiting. Everything was about to change. The phone kept vibrating insistently in my lap as I stared at the screen, torn between answering immediately or enduring the agony of this dinner a moment longer. Shelby eyed me curiously, lips pursed, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Mom's knife hovered mid-cut through the turkey, while Dad's narrowed eyes held a challenge I felt down to my bones. The tension thickened unbearably, every silent second stretching painfully into the next. "Are you going to answer that?" Shelby finally snapped, breaking the silence. "Seems rude to interrupt dinner." "I'm sorry," I murmured quickly, already rising from my chair, phone clutched tightly. "I need to take this. It's important." "Important enough to abandon the family on Thanksgiving?" Dad's tone was acidic, heavy with disdain. "Nice to see your priorities haven't changed." Ignoring the jab, I retreated to the privacy of the hallway, pulse racing wildly. My thumb shook as I swiped to answer, breath hitching in my throat. "This is Krista Manning," I said softly, gripping the phone like a lifeline. "Krista, it's Danielle," came the excited voice of my associate, her energy crackling through the phone. "Sorry for the late call, but I thought you'd want to know immediately. They signed. You got the deal." My knees nearly buckled beneath me, relief flooding my body like warm sunshine. My vision blurred momentarily, tears stinging my eyes as I steadied myself against the wall. "Are you sure?" My voice cracked, barely a whisper. "They signed everything?" "Absolutely," Danielle confirmed, her voice bubbling with triumph. "The final agreement just came through, signed, sealed, and done. This is huge, Christa. You're officially on the map." For a second, I let it wash over me, the sweetness of success untainted by anyone else's approval. My heart thumped joyously, pride radiating from deep inside. I'd done it. Quietly, relentlessly, I'd built something undeniable, something mine. "Thank you, Danielle," I breathed, wiping away a tear. "I couldn't have done this without you." Returning to the dining room, the euphoria still danced beneath my skin, giving me strength as I took my seat again. But the family's icy stares quickly brought me back to reality. Shelby's eyebrows arched skeptically. "Everything all right? Must have been an awfully big deal to interrupt dinner." "It was," I replied evenly, a quiet confidence growing within me. "A major client just finalized a deal with my firm." Dad scoffed openly, rolling his eyes. "A major client, huh? You expect us to believe that?" Mom shifted uncomfortably, attempting to mediate. "Christa, sweetheart, perhaps we could keep the work discussions for later. Tonight's supposed to be a family night." "Family?" I repeated softly, eyes moving around the table. "Is that what this is?" Dad leaned back, face darkening. "Watch your tone. You're lucky you're even invited here." Shelby's lips curled cruelly. "Honestly, Christa, it's exhausting. Every year it's the same vague story about some secret success. Why do you keep embarrassing yourself?" My chest tightened painfully, anger simmering beneath my forced composure. Yet, as much as their words stung, they no longer held the power they once did. "I'm not embarrassed, Shelby," I said calmly, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "I've built something real, something successful, on my own." Dad's fists clenched visibly, anger flaring. "Enough. If you refuse to respect this family, then you clearly don't belong here." I felt the blow of his words sharply, yet I didn't crumble. Not this time. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Danielle flashed across the screen, reaffirming everything I already knew. Tonight, I no longer needed their permission to feel successful. I had something stronger than their approval, my own validation. And they were about to learn exactly how powerful that was. The silence following Dad's outburst hung over the table, brittle and dangerous. Shelby's lips parted in feigned surprise, while Mom nervously toyed with the napkin in her lap, eyes darting between Dad and me, her discomfort palpable. Dad leaned forward slightly, his gaze locked onto mine, voice heavy with finality. "I've had enough of your drama, Christa. You've been given chance after chance, and you still insist on disrupting everything we've worked to build as a family. You're officially done here." The words landed like a blow to my chest, knocking the breath from my lungs. Despite knowing this moment had been simmering beneath the surface for years, hearing it aloud in front of everyone brought a fresh wave of pain. The room seemed suddenly colder, shadows stretching longer in the candlelight. Shelby glanced at Randall, then back at Dad, her expression neutral, but eyes glinting sharply with something close to victory. "Dad, maybe you're being a bit harsh," she said, her tone flat and unconvincing, clearly savoring every syllable. "Krista just hasn't found her way yet." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself not to rise to the bait. They wanted to see me crumble, to accept their version of my worth. But I refused. Quiet strength surged inside me, grounding me in a resolve they'd never seen coming. Dad shook his head dismissively. "No, Shelby. We've humored this fantasy long enough. If Krista insists on chasing imaginary success rather than contributing meaningfully to this family, then she's made her choice." Mom's eyes widened in alarm, panic flickering briefly across her face before she quickly masked it with practiced composure. "Please, let's not do this now. It's Thanksgiving." Dad's eyes flashed angrily. "Exactly." And once again Krista made it about herself. The air thickened further, the silence nearly suffocating. My hands rested in my lap, knuckles whitening beneath the tablecloth. For years I'd quietly accepted their judgments, their dismissals, their narratives, but tonight something within me finally snapped. I wouldn't sit silently. "You're right, Dad," I said softly, drawing their startled attention. "I have made a choice, I've chosen myself, and I'm proud of that choice." His eyes narrowed dangerously. "Proud of what? Failure? Embarrassment?" "Proud," I interrupted, my voice growing steadier, "of building a successful business. Proud of the life I've created without your approval, and proud of finally realizing that nothing I ever do will change your minds. So yes, I've chosen myself." Shelby rolled her eyes dramatically, feigning boredom. "Always the martyr." "No," I corrected calmly. "Not a martyr, just finally free." Dad's face darkened further, voice low and dangerous. "If you're so proud, then leave. You're not welcome at this table or in this family." The ultimatum lingered in the air, harsh and unforgiving. Around the table nobody contradicted him, their silence an implicit agreement. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I stood slowly, refusing to let them see the tremble in my legs or the ache in my chest. Forcing a steady voice, I met each pair of eyes around the table, acknowledging the lifetime of dismissals and subtle cruelties. Then calmly I pushed back my chair, refusing to give them the satisfaction of anger or tears. "If that's what you want," I said quietly, voice unwavering, "then I'm gone. But understand this clearly. You don't get to define me anymore." Turning toward the door, feeling their eyes burning into my back, I walked slowly, deliberately, away from the family table I'd desperately wanted to belong to, yet had never truly fit. Tonight, their rejection didn't feel like an ending. It felt like liberation. As soon as I stepped onto the porch, pulling the door firmly shut behind me, the cold November air hit like a welcome splash of clarity, but beneath the adrenaline and the righteous anger, a deeper ache pulsed painfully in my chest. Disowned, cut off, officially erased from the family that had spent decades subtly erasing me anyway. My hands shook as I fumbled to unlock my car, vision blurred with tears I stubbornly refused to shed. Not yet, not here. But just as I slid into the driver's seat, closing my eyes to steady my breathing, my phone buzzed again, lighting up with Danielle's face once more. My heart leaped anxiously. What could be left after the earlier good news? "Danielle?" I answered hesitantly, my voice breaking slightly despite my effort at composure. "What's going on?" "Oh my God, Christa, I am so sorry to keep bothering you tonight." Danielle burst out breathlessly, excitement trembling through every word. "But you have to hear this. The client loved your pitch so much that they're fast-tracking the initial payment. They've just wired half the contract up front. Krista, we have $2.5 million in the account, right now." Her words echoed through me, each syllable stunning me into silence. The rush of blood to my head left me momentarily dizzy, the numbers spinning wildly in my mind. I'd expected success eventually, but this immediate, irrefutable proof of everything I'd built, this felt surreal, even miraculous. "Are you sure?" I whispered, hardly believing the enormity of what she was saying. "They sent it already?" "It's already confirmed," Danielle laughed joyously. "Krista, your consulting firm just went from quiet success to serious game-changer overnight. You're officially unstoppable." I leaned back against the car seat, breath hitching softly as relief and pride collided powerfully inside me. It was overwhelming, beautifully, intensely overwhelming. Thank you, Danielle, I said again, voice thick with genuine gratitude. I don't even have words right now. You don't need any, Danielle replied warmly. Just let it sink in. You've earned this. As the call ended, I sat alone in the quiet darkness of my car, the reality of this moment slowly settling into my bones. I'd done it. Not just survived, not just scraped by, but succeeded beyond even my boldest expectations. And it had happened at precisely the moment my family had openly rejected me. The poetic justice felt almost scripted, yet profoundly genuine. My gaze drifted back to the warmly lit windows of my parents' house. Through the curtains, I glimpsed their silhouettes, still gathered around the table, undoubtedly rehashing my perceived failures. I imagined their smug certainty that I'd never amount to anything meaningful. I almost wanted to go back inside, slam the phone onto the table, show them the numbers, make them acknowledge me at last. But then, a calmer, quieter voice inside reminded me that I didn't need their acknowledgement anymore. This victory was entirely mine, untarnished by their biases, undiluted by their approval. For the first time in my life, their opinions held no power over me. Starting the engine, I took a slow, steadying breath, letting the satisfaction fill my lungs deeply, pushing out the hurt, the anger, the years of invisibility. This was my new beginning, born from the ashes of their rejection. As I pulled away from the driveway, leaving their judgment far behind, a fierce joy blossomed in my chest. Tonight, I had finally found my voice. Not by shouting louder than they ever did, but by quietly succeeding beyond their wildest imagination. And nothing had ever felt more satisfying. By the time I reached the end of my parents' long, winding street, adrenaline was pounding through me so intensely that I had to pull over briefly, gripping the steering wheel until my breathing steadied. My heart raced with the fresh thrill of triumph, yet beneath that exhilaration still lingered the shadow of family rejection, a complicated ache tangled deeply within my chest. As I glanced in my rearview mirror, watching the quiet neighborhood shrink away behind me, my phone buzzed sharply once again, startling me. A text from Shelby flashed onto the screen. "Come back, Krista. Let's talk this out like adults." For a second, hope fluttered weakly within me, whispering that perhaps they'd realized their mistake, maybe they'd finally seen me clearly. But then the bitter truth swiftly followed. Their sudden desire for reconciliation wasn't about me. Not really. It was about appearances, pride, their carefully preserved illusion of family perfection. My fingers hovered momentarily over the keyboard, tempted to respond, tempted to finally have the last word. But something stopped me, holding me back from engaging on their terms. This moment wasn't theirs to control. I'd finally taken the power back, and I wasn't about to relinquish it now. Instead, I turned the car sharply around, driving decisively back toward my parents' house. But this return wasn't out of submission or regret. It was my chance, finally, to confront them face to face, to unmask their hypocrisy and reclaim my narrative openly. When I stepped back inside, the conversation instantly hushed, their startled expressions revealing surprise and discomfort. Dad straightened defensively, eyes flashing dangerously. "Decided to apologize, Christa?" "No," I said firmly, voice calm and steady, eyes meeting his unwaveringly. "I decided to tell you exactly why I won't." Shelby crossed her arms defensively, posture rigid. "Christa, stop being dramatic." "There's nothing dramatic about honesty," I replied evenly, holding her gaze until she looked away first. Turning toward my parents, I felt a clarity I'd never experienced before, the words coming easily, without bitterness or hesitation. "For years, I chased your approval, always believing that someday you'd finally see me. But tonight, when you openly disowned me, I realized something crucial. I don't need your approval. I never did." Dad opened his mouth sharply, anger flaring, but I raised my hand gently, silencing him with quiet authority. "My consulting firm, the hobby as you dismissed it, is thriving. Tonight, while you were busy declaring me a failure, a global client wired $2.5 million directly into my account. They chose me, valued me, respected what I've built, something you've never done." Mom's eyes widened dramatically, her mask of composure finally slipping. $2.5 million, Christa?" I nodded calmly, refusing to be swayed by her sudden interest. "Yes, that's the value others see in my work, the same work you've ignored, belittled, and openly mocked." Shelby paled visibly, her forced composure cracking. "You're lying," she whispered shakily, clearly rattled. "I'm not. I responded, holding her gaze firmly. But it doesn't matter what you believe anymore. I'm here now only because I needed to say this directly, once and for all. Your narrative of who I am, who I've always been, ends here. I won't apologize for finally stepping out of the shadow you've cast. Their stunned silence filled the room, heavy and oppressive, yet incredibly liberating. I'd said what I'd needed to, delivered the truth I'd kept bottled inside for years. My breathing eased, a profound sense of relief washing over me. Quietly, I stepped back toward the door, feeling their eyes follow me helplessly, powerless to control or contain me any longer. And Shelby? I paused briefly, glancing back one last time. Good luck being the perfect child. Trust me, it's exhausting. Walking away again, this time on my terms, I left their stunned silence ringing behind me, feeling lighter, stronger, freer than ever before. When I finally reached home, my home, the house I'd bought quietly and painstakingly 3 months earlier, I paused on the front porch, breathing deeply in the crisp night air. The warmth of the porch light spilled gently around me, a welcoming glow I'd earned through years of quiet effort, invisible sacrifices, and secret triumphs. Inside, laughter drifted from the kitchen, a comforting melody of voices belonging to the people who'd truly stood beside me. My best friend Mara, my colleague Danielle, and Jacob, my steadfast neighbor who'd become more like family than those I'd just left behind. As soon as I stepped through the door, Mara rushed forward, her eyes wide with concern. Krista, we've been waiting. Are you okay? What happened? My throat tightened painfully at the genuine worry etched across their faces. A stark contrast to the carefully masked judgment I'd endured just hours ago. I smiled softly, nodding reassuringly, though tears finally escaped down my cheeks. Honestly, it was rough, I admitted quietly, feeling safe enough here to let the facade crumble. But I stood up to them. I finally said everything I've held back for years. Jacob gently squeezed my shoulder, eyes kind and understanding. Good for you. It was time. Danielle smiled warmly, her excitement barely contained. We're so proud of you, Christa. And by the way, your success deserves celebrating. Congratulations, boss. Their genuine affection enveloped me, creating a warmth I'd rarely known around my family. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, accepted, and celebrated, not despite who I was, but precisely because of it. We gathered around the small kitchen island, sharing food they'd prepared lovingly, exchanging stories, laughter flowing naturally and unforced. Here there were no carefully rehearsed remarks, no hidden barbs, no judgments disguised as compliments. Just friends who genuinely cared, listening with open hearts and supportive smiles. Jacob raised his glass in a gentle toast, his voice soft but powerful. To Christa, the bravest, strongest, most quietly fierce person I know. Your success was never defined by your family, it was defined by your strength, and we couldn't be more honored to celebrate you. Their glasses clinked softly against mine, warmth flooding my chest as their words resonated deeply, filling the spaces inside me left empty by family rejection. It wasn't about replacing them, it was about finally choosing the people who truly valued me, not the image or expectation I'd never quite met. Later, as dishes were cleared and coffee brewed, Mara sat beside me quietly, her voice gentle yet firm. You realize what tonight means, right? I looked at her curiously. What do you mean? You've spent your whole life believing your family's definition of success, she explained gently, eyes filled with compassion. Tonight you shattered that illusion completely. You finally embraced your own definition. That takes incredible courage. I exhaled softly, nodding slowly, absorbing her words. I didn't realize until tonight how much their approval controlled me. Breaking away was terrifying, but it's also the most liberating thing I've ever done. Danielle smiled encouragingly. Now you get to rewrite your story, Christa, and we're all here to help you do it. Their reassurance wrapped around me like a comforting embrace, banishing lingering doubts and fears. My chosen family was here. People who saw me clearly, without filters or expectations, who celebrated every quiet success and supported every painful struggle. Tonight, in this kitchen surrounded by love and authenticity, I finally understood the true meaning of family. It wasn't blood, it was choice, and for the first time in my life, I'd chosen wisely. The days following Thanksgiving brought a relentless wave of messages. Texts from Shelby oscillating between anger and strained attempts at reconciliation, voicemails from mom trying to smooth things over without ever truly acknowledging what had happened, and even emails from dad, terse and demanding. Yet I let each attempt bounce off me, determined to maintain the space I'd finally carved out for myself. I wasn't avoiding them out of spite or bitterness. Instead, I was giving myself something I'd never allowed before. Room to breathe, to think, to fully absorb the enormity of what had occurred and figure out what I needed moving forward. It felt like a precious, rare gift I owed myself after years of quietly accepting their judgments. One chilly afternoon, sipping coffee at my kitchen table, I finally typed a carefully measured response to my family. A boundary firmly drawn. I appreciate you reaching out, but right now I need space. My choices, achievements, and identity are non-negotiable, and any future relationship between us must start from a place of genuine respect. Until then, please respect my request for distance. Pressing send felt strangely freeing, as if I'd finally stepped fully out of their shadow. Though I anticipated another flood of responses, surprisingly, only silence followed. It was both relieving and sobering. Confirmation that perhaps my family had no idea how to handle me when I no longer played their designated role. In the newfound quiet, I dove fully into my business, pouring energy into my growing company, embracing the thrilling challenge of managing larger clients, increased responsibilities, and an expanding team. With Danielle at my side, each new achievement felt deeply rewarding, resonating far beyond mere financial gain. This was my vision, my values. Authentic, unapologetic, entirely mine. My chosen family rallied around me too, providing comfort, companionship, and endless encouragement. Mara dropped by often, always ready with a warm hug, a home-cooked meal, or an evening spent laughing over silly TV shows. Jacob's calm, steady presence became an anchor, a quiet reminder of resilience and strength. Their constant support reinforced the boundaries I'd established, making clear what healthy, genuine relationships felt like. One evening, while sharing dinner at Jacob's cozy dining room table, Mara raised her glass with a playful grin. To Christas Fortress, strong, secure, and unapologetically hers. I laughed softly, clinking glasses warmly with my closest friends, feeling the metaphor resonate deeply. The walls I'd built around my life weren't meant to isolate. They were protective, affirming boundaries, defining clearly what I would and wouldn't accept. Jacob leaned forward thoughtfully, his voice gentle yet firm. Just remember, boundaries aren't about punishing people. They're about honoring yourself. If your family truly wants back into your life, they'll learn to respect those walls. I nodded, absorbing his words carefully. I know. And honestly, I'm open to that, but only on terms that truly reflect who I've become. Later, alone in my quiet house curled up beneath a soft blanket, I reflected on everything I'd learned since that painful Thanksgiving night. I realized these new boundaries weren't just physical distance or emotional defenses. They were declarations of self-respect, quiet assertions of my own worth. In that peaceful solitude, something profoundly shifted within me. I felt, perhaps for the first time, genuinely strong, untethered from past expectations, finally free to create relationships grounded in authenticity and mutual respect. This was my fortress, solid yet flexible, clear yet compassionate. And from now on, those who entered my life would do so knowing exactly where I stood. No apologies, no compromises. For once, I was defining the rules. And nothing had ever felt more powerful. As my consulting firm continued to grow, expanding beyond anything I'd once dared imagine, I found myself contemplating what success truly meant. Not just for myself, but for all the others who'd lived their lives feeling invisible, unseen, unheard. That quiet ache I'd carried for years now became my strongest motivation, guiding me toward a legacy that resonated far beyond financial success. One clear winter morning, sitting in my sunlit home office, I drafted plans for a new initiative. It would empower individuals whose strengths and talents went overlooked by conventional standards. The dreamers, quiet achievers, and silent fighters who, like me, had spent their lives underestimated. When I shared my vision with Danielle, her eyes sparkled with immediate excitement. This is exactly what people need, Christa. A platform to help them shine, free from judgment. Together, we named the project the Manning Initiative. Not to honor my family's legacy, but to rewrite it entirely. This was my reclamation, a deliberate act of defiance and healing, transforming years of rejection into something powerful, meaningful, and undeniably positive. We launched the initiative with a clear, heartfelt mission statement, recognizing, supporting, and uplifting those whose successes were quiet, whose accomplishments were invisible, and whose voices had long been ignored. Immediately, the response was overwhelming. Emails flooded in from people sharing their own stories of quiet struggle, silent resilience, and overlooked triumphs. Each story resonated deeply within me, echoing my own experiences, reminding me why this mattered so profoundly. Suddenly, my years of invisibility felt purposeful, fuel for something far greater than myself. When the local media caught wind of the initiative, interview requests began rolling in. Initially hesitant to step into the spotlight, I found surprising strength in sharing my story honestly and openly. One evening, seated comfortably in a softly lit studio, a reporter asked gently, "Krista, after everything you've been through, why build this initiative under your family's name?" I paused, thoughtfully considering my response before answering clearly and calmly. Because reclaiming my name is about empowerment. For years, I allowed others, my family, society, to define what success meant, to shape my narrative. By using this name now, on my own terms, I'm rewriting that narrative completely. I'm showing others that your past doesn't have to define your future, and your worth isn't dictated by anyone else's standards. The interview aired widely, sparking conversations, invitations to speak at events, and opportunities to reach even more people. Each interaction deepened my commitment, fueling a growing passion to create lasting change, to ensure that no one else had to endure what I'd lived through without knowing they were not alone. Then unexpectedly came a letter, handwritten, careful script on simple stationery. My heart quickened as I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. I hesitated briefly, apprehension tightening my chest, before unfolding it cautiously. Her words were simple, vulnerable, entirely unexpected. "Christa, I'm sorry. I didn't understand before. But now I see clearly. I'm proud of you." Tears blurred my vision, my hands trembling slightly. The weight of those words, a lifetime overdue, washed over me, complicated and bittersweet. This wasn't about seeking approval anymore. It was acknowledgement, a quiet recognition that I'd finally been seen, understood, and valued. But more importantly, reading her letter, I realized something profound. My healing wasn't dependent on their validation. It was already underway, rooted deeply in the powerful, positive impact I'd begun creating in the lives of others. I folded the letter gently, placing it carefully in a drawer, not as a trophy, nor as proof of their change, but as a quiet reminder of how far I'd come. My legacy wasn't defined by their apology, it was built from my strength, my resilience, and the stories of all those I now uplifted. This was my narrative now, and it felt powerful, authentic, and entirely mine. On a quiet spring evening, nearly half a year after the Thanksgiving dinner that changed everything, I sat on my back porch, savoring the warmth of the setting sun. My garden, once neglected, now blossomed vibrantly, a gentle reflection of the careful, nurturing attention I'd finally allowed myself. The silence felt comforting rather than isolating, a peaceful pause allowing me to reflect on everything that had transpired. My business thrived beyond expectations, the Manning initiative was transforming lives, and my chosen family continued to support me unconditionally. Yet tonight, beneath the satisfaction lay something even more powerful, a profound, unshakable sense of self-worth. For years I'd chased a mirage, validation from people who simply couldn't or wouldn't see me clearly. I'd allowed their judgments to shape my self-image, their criticism to erode my confidence, and their standards to dictate my worth. Now, looking back, I saw clearly how profoundly I'd underestimated my own strength. It was never about their acceptance, after all. My value had always existed, quietly powerful, waiting patiently for me to recognize it myself. And now that I finally had, no one could ever take that away from me again. My phone gently buzzed beside me, breaking the silence. Another message appeared from Mom, our communication now tentative yet increasingly genuine, slowly rebuilding trust, brick by brick. It was simple. "Thinking of you, Christa. Hope you're doing well." This time responding felt natural, easy. My fingers typed carefully but warmly, "Thank you, Mom, I am, truly." Setting my phone aside again, a sense of calm enveloped me, deeper than I'd ever known. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't weakness or surrender. It was strength, resilience, my choice to heal rather than hold on to pain, it was for myself, more than anyone else. In this quiet moment, under the softly fading light, I finally understood peace, not as the absence of conflict, but as the acceptance of my true self, exactly as I was, without conditions or compromises. I leaned back, eyes closing gently, breathing deeply the soft fragrance of evening flowers. The ache of invisibility, the sting of rejection, the restless longing for approval, they'd all faded away, leaving only quiet, steady confidence rooted deeply inside me. I no longer measured myself by others' expectations or definitions of success. Instead, my value came from something far more reliable, more honest, my own quiet acknowledgement of who I truly was, flaws and all. I'd found peace by simply accepting myself, fully and authentically. That realization resonated deeply within me, steady and powerful. A truth I wished I could whisper softly to my younger self. You've always been enough. The evening settled gently around me, stars beginning to glow faintly in the deepening sky. My story wasn't dramatic revenge or vindication. It was something quieter, more profound. It was about reclaiming self-worth, redefining family, and finally understanding that peace came not from being seen by others, but by truly seeing myself. Tonight, I'd never felt more whole, more authentic, or more at peace. My journey was far from over, yet now I walked forward with clarity, strength, and unwavering self-respect. And for the first time, that was enough. More than enough. Have you ever felt invisible within your own family, like nothing you ever achieved would be enough? Maybe you spent years quietly trying to fit into someone else's definition of success, always wondering when they'd finally notice you. If my story resonated with you, I invite you to share your own experiences in the comments. Tell me about the moment you decided to redefine success for yourself, about the boundaries you set, or the peace you discovered when you finally embraced your own worth. And if my journey meant something to you, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's okay. Essential, even to define success on their own terms. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's expectations. It isn't dictated by family, friends, or anyone who refuses to see the real you. Your value is yours alone, quiet but powerful, ready to guide you forward the moment you choose to embrace it. Ask yourself, whose story are you living right now? Reflect honestly. Then, take control and rewrite it in a way that's authentically yours. You are enough, just as you are.